joining us here. We have another exciting conversation here today that really sits at the center of employee trust, fairness, and experience. Really, we're expanding in how AI can help HR deliver more equitable and enjoyable leave experiences. I'm Nick. I'm co-hosted with Emma today, and we also have a familiar guest on our show. If you've been seeing our episodes, you know that Hollis is no stranger to our series, and we want to welcome her back. Hollis, thanks for joining us here today for our exciting conversation we have going on.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
One thing that we want to start within this is really laying the foundation, really laying the framework here. When we talk about an equitable and an enjoyable leave experience, what does that actually look like?
When we talk to a lot of our customers, we know that leave is already an extremely stressful period of time. Whether you're going on leave for an exciting reason, welcoming a baby, something similar, or a reason that's not as exciting, it can still be really difficult to navigate what your transition out of work looks like, when you might be back, all of the things that you need to manage, like job protections or pay while you're out. And so from our perspective, an enjoyable leave experience is really reducing as much friction as possible for an HR team to manage a leave and help provide that human support that an employee may need, and for an employee to navigate the leave process that they are responsible for on their end. And so as much as we can help ease the burden of the administrative work that employees might be responsible for, the load that HR teams are taking on, the emotional burden that the leave process may present, we want to be able to do that through our product and through our support offerings.
Yeah, I think another thing that we like to just acknowledge is that leave very rarely is like a one size fits all, right? Like if I am going out on maternity leave, there might be an instance that makes it more complicated or different or changes the name of the game. So obviously we all know leave is really complicated. Why do you feel like consistency is so difficult for HR teams relying on manual interpretation alone?
Consistency is really one of those things that you can only accomplish at a certain scale when you have standardized processes. And when you're managing leave in-house, or you have a lot of manual processes behind your leave program at your company, it means that there's not necessarily a consistent workflow for how things are supposed to go that you can audit, that you can monitor, and that you can feel confident in is happening for every employee every time. And so when it comes to the pitfalls of not having that consistency, there might be someone who has a manager that has certain knowledge that another manager doesn't have that leads to a worse experience for their employee. There might be an HR person who is well seasoned in managing leave at their organization, or a HR person that's very new to leave of absence and doesn't necessarily know certain information. And all of those small inconsistencies can really build up over time, not only creating an inconsistent leave experience for an employee, but also potentially exposing a company to a lot of risk when we're not doing consistent auditable processes every time someone is going through a leave of absence.
Well, and one of those inconsistencies that can happen along the way, like you're mentioning, can be bias, right? If you have a more experienced manager, like you're pointing out, they might know something that others don't. So even with the best intentions and inconsistency, the bias can still slip into this process. Where is this happening the most often?
I would say that when we see the most biases in the leave process is through the manager experience. A lot of managers are not proximate to the leave of absence process at all. And so what the contact looks like between a manager and an employee while they're on leave can look vastly different and sometimes slips outside of compliance guardrails, which can be really problematic. Sometimes the expectations that a manager may have of their employee might be very hands-off for some employees, letting them take their leave, take the time that they need out of work. And some managers might feel very demanding of their employee, even while they're out of office for a certain period of time. And that can present a lot of compliance risk, a lot of stress for the employee over time that doesn't know what they're entitled to and what their rights are for the leave of absence that they're taking. And making sure that that process is as standardized as possible is really important to avoid slipping into that gray area.
And that doesn't even, account for any of those situations where maybe I don't have a leave process or a leave management tool at all. I'm not using any software. I have no knowledge. And I think a lot of these things can really be left up to interpretation about what someone's eligible for how long. Oh, maybe I fudged this here. I let them go a few extra days, or maybe I need them back sooner or whatever. Well, Hollis, we want to tie in a little thing called AI. I don't know if you've heard of it yet. It's kind of, it's emerging. A lot of what we're talking about right now is how AI can help the process, but not necessarily lead the way. We don't want to remove the human element of this. What does that balance look like in practice?
One of the things that AI is really good at is taking a lot of information in and surfacing the most relevant information that you might need to pull at the time. And so what that looks like in our industry, focusing on leave of absence, is being able to take in a lot of information about how certain leaves work, the entitlements that employees have under their state or federal laws, and things like that, to surface what might be most relevant to your employee that you need to know in order to make an important decision for their leave. And so we think of AI as a tool to help facilitate the beginning of the process, where instead of feeling really unsure about the information that you're even gathering, you can know that you're getting leave information from a trusted source like Tilt, have that information surface to you efficiently so that you can handle that human side of leave on your own. So we never want to pass off eligibility decisions or even necessarily pieces of the employee experience to AI, but we want to use it as a tool to create the most seamless process possible so that humans can do the work that we're really good at.
Part of creating the seamless process and really, to your point, making an enjoyable leave experience is, like we talked about, like understanding and trying to limit as much bias that there can be, like as much as we can. So from Hollis, from your perspective, what are specific ways AI can reduce this bias?
So AI really operates by feeding in a basis of information and surfacing that information when you need it in different ways. And so one of the things that is important to Tilt is that we are a trusted source of compliance information that AI can pull from in a standardized fashion, no matter who's taking the leave, what type of leave they're taking, what their employer or company experience may be, so that we can make sure that everyone is getting access to quality information, no matter when they're interacting with Tilt. And so when we think about what it looks like to reduce bias and standardize processes, it really starts from providing trustworthy information to a tool that's able to surface it to you when you need it, so that you can apply a fair experience, a knowledgeable experience for every single one of your employees, no matter who is administering the leave.
Hollis, one thing that we hear a lot is that rigid one-size-fits-all solutions or processes don't create employee experiences that are tailored, that a more tailored solution can. So why does personalization still matter so much, even right now while we're talking about standardizing things with AI?
Every organization has a different company culture, and company culture is one of the main drivers of why people join that organization, why people choose to stay. And so even though we're leveraging a tool like AI to help standardize information and deliver it in the ways that work best for an HR team and an employee, we don't want to necessarily standardize the employee experience that an HR team works really hard to create and cultivate. And we really believe that leave of absence is one of the cornerstones of employee culture at an organization, because it can really make or break the trust you have in your HR team, the trust you have in your manager, even the trust that you have in your fellow coworkers.
So ultimately what we're saying is HR can provide that experience for the employee that is equitable. They know that they are receiving the exact same treatment as one of their peers.
Yeah.
It's clear, and employees have peace of mind. They know that they don't have to fear going out. They can take their leave however they need to, whenever they need to. So from an HR standpoint, then, what are we empowering them to do? What contributes to that kind of experience for an employee?
I think what we're empowering HR to do is really feel like an expert in the leave space without having to spend years and years and years developing that information on their own. Tilt has worked on tens of thousands of leave cases, and all of that information relies on a standardized understanding of how to apply leave and the nuances of how to conduct it at an organization. And so by giving HR a preview into what our insight looks like without exposing private information or any employee information that isn't necessary, we're allowing them to really feel like the experts that employees expect them to be. And we think that's really important for Tilt moving forward.
Yeah, and in that space too, they have so much more time to be empathetic with their employees, or to be that personal touch, the person that actually knows the person that's going through something, whether it's, like you said, the baby they just had, they can congratulate them in whatever way their company culture might, be behind, or whether they lost someone or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that knowing that you're compliant takes away a lot of the worry for an HR person associated with being responsible for conducting a leave of absence. And when you can eliminate that feeling for HR, that anxiety doesn't have to pass over to an employee in a time that we especially do not want it to.
For sure.
Yeah. Helps them to really be there for their people when they need it, instead of having to worry about the stress or wondering if this is compliant or if this is okay. They're actually able to enjoy what they're doing and be able to help them. It's a big deal. So Hollis, let's land the plane here, as I like to call it. If you were to break it down into one simple core message that you want HR to take away from this conversation, in terms of being able to shape and create an equitable or an enjoyable experience, what would be the one thing that you would share with them?
Leave is a really difficult thing to do on your own. And I think for the sake of your employees having a positive experience, the sake of HR being able to reduce stress and feel really confident about the employee culture that they're creating, having a tool that allows you to surface relevant information when you need it and apply it across your organization in the standardized way is not only safe, but it's essential to helping cultivate that culture that we know HR spends so much time thinking about and strategizing. And we think Tilt's tools are a really positive enabler to be able to do that confidently.